All right, ladies, gentlemen, boys and girls, that's right, it is the AFL SuperCoach Podcast. One more time, your in and out guide to the greatest game on earth, AFL SuperCoach. Cause I'll tell you what, after round one, footy is back. And how? And so is my, horrible SuperCoach team out of nowhere. I'm your host, James Clements. I'm joined, as always, by, three of the greatest SuperCoach minds we've got out here. We've got Al Payton. What's going on, Al?
Exciting to be back. Already plenty of decisions to be made 1 week into the season, and I can see we've already made a sub after last week's show.
We did. We've got Dan Batten in place of Tim Mitchell. What's going on, Dan?
Yeah, I've a decent week, and I came on as a sub like Jack Billings in round 0 the first time, and now I'm back for a full game. Hopefully I can have the same impact.
Love it. We'll also have the Phantom on later to chat Bubble Boys, I believe. That'll be fun. I need a bit of help with some of my bubbles. But remember, before anything else, sign up to SuperCoach Plus, all the good stuff. Jump on your tips.com.au. Make sure you got your tips in. And for all the insight that you need for all SuperCoach gear, smash code SPORTS. And you can follow these two jokers on the old tweet machine. You got Dan Batten _ that's all one word there. And you got Al _Superfooty. I love that. I could give it the pause. Give it the pause and we'll go. But before anything else, we're going to wrap round one very briefly. What did we learn? I learned that it's great to have every team playing, and it's a lot easier to play SuperCoach. But on top of that, having all the teams play, it was just a festival of footy. And you're just like tracking scores left, right, and centre. And it's just an absolute vibe over that weekend. Just looking them all roll in, live scores. It was great. Al, what did you feel?
Well, I've got some bad news for you straight up, which is this week not every team plays because we're rolling straight into the first of these early season buys. So I'm sure we'll get to a little bit of discussion about that. But yeah, it's just very hard to not get caught up in 1 week. We talked about this with the round 0 games, and now we've got 1 week of information to base our decisions on, but sometimes that's all we got. So we just have to do our best to make the best calls. But I suppose, would say don't get too caught up in where you're ranked after round 1, because there'll be some sort of very fluky teams that just happen to have all the players who went well. And it's a marathon, not a sprint. So maybe at least wait a month or so, and maybe even after these early buys, we'll get a much better picture of sort of where the lay of the land is. So, I scored a 21.62, which I'm reasonably happy with, ranked 28,000th, but there was over 150,000 players signed up before the season started, so that's not bad. Bit to work on, but not a bad platform. But I wouldn't get too upset if you didn't have the best week first up.
Nice one. Dan, what did you score?
2,154 for me, so 8 points behind Al. I chickened out of Tom Green VC. That was probably the main disappointment this weekend. I went with Bont, so only lost about 26 or so points there, so he came good. In the end, I guess my main point of difference pick was Ollie Dempsey on the bench, who ended up winning the round 1 Rising Star. So I was happy with that to get some cash there on the bench, but had Zach Fisher, like a few of us who stunk it up there at halfback. So not sure what to do there, and I'm sure we'll get to him a bit later.
Nice one. I scored 21.23 and completely cooked my loophole. I had Tom Green. It was all nailed in and had no one that I could actually loophole with him on the bench. So completely cooked it, didn't think it through. But before I knew it, I was in a car up to Ballarat and it was all over. But round wrap, hero and villain from each of us. Mine's very easy. Noah Anderson is my hero. Well, I'm loving my Noah Anderson pick. He was one of the guys that I just sort of had from the get-go. And 129 this week, absolutely smashed it. Enjoyed that. In the wet. It was gross, but he still scored amazingly. And my villain is the Warlord. He was going gangbusters, was George Wardlaw. And he had 31 points at quarter time. I'm like, all right, boys, we're on here, 120. Let's just go, come on. And then just sort of went absolutely MIA in the second half.
Yeah, we were getting texts from the Phantom at that stage because he picked him as well. But
he tweeted something as well, chirping about him. And
after that, we might ask him about that later.
Brutal. Al, your hero.
Well, he wasn't the highest scorer in my team, but I'm going to give it to Jack Steele because normally it's probably not advisable to trade someone in at about 4 o'clock in the morning on the day of the game. I wasn't just up doing that. I was feeding my baby, and I thought, you know what? I really like how Jack Steele looked in that practice match, so I'm going to chuck him in my midfield. And he did look really good in round 1 as well. Scored 119, and at that price, I think I'm really happy with that. So even though I did have to trade out Riley Bonner to get him, and in the end, that only gained me about 15 points. But I think he'll be a good pick for the season. And I'm going to give my villain, and it probably won't be the first time for the year, to Luke Beveridge. Has been a nemesis for SuperCoaches for a long time, and he was up to his old tricks on the weekend when he subbed Riley Sanders out of the game. game, halfway through the third quarter. Sanders was going okay on sort of 40, 50 points. And, if he'd had another quarter, he would have given us, I think, a pretty decent rookie score. But a lot of us had him on field. Now that creates a headache, especially when we've got a best 18 round, and a lot of us have pretty good midfield benches. So which of these rookies do we actually want to put on the field? And Sanders, we thought was a safe guy to have on the field to start, but now maybe not so sure.
I just want you at every Bevo press conference just asking him questions about SuperCoach. I think he would respond great.
Yeah, I'd love that, I'm sure.
Definitely wouldn't put you in a headlock. Dan, who was your hero and villain?
My hero was Isaac Heaney. I'm sure many of us had him. I know Tim Mitchell didn't. So, and
maybe
we
that's
heard
why he's
all
not
about
here.
that. Yes, that's why I've replaced him for this week. He was just absolutely superb in that Friday night game, kicking goals, winning it out of the middle, doing everything. And my villain is just the injury gods. I mean, Gibcus and Reed, they finally get out of the park, sideline for all of last season, and then Gibcus ACL and Reed hamstring. And I think we're probably going to have to trade both of them. Absolutely
brutal gear that was. I'm in the exact same boat. I don't have the Heen man, the Heen machine, and I also had both Gibcus and Reed. So just punch in the guts time. But receipts to finish up some of the wrap up. Al versus Tim last week. What happened there, Al? I love this. We had Howes versus Caulfield. You back Caulfield?
Turns out that was the wrong move. I mean, neither of them scored that well, and it was pretty much a head-to-head, very tense battle for most of the game. They were both tracking on, I think they were on about 30 each at three-quarter time. And in the end, Blake Howes got the chocolates by just the 15 points it cost me by having Caulfield on the field. But, when we get to some trade-in targets, I think Howes will be very high on that list because all those teams who played in round 0, those guys are on the bubble, about to change price a week earlier than we would normally see. So, anyone from Melbourne, Richmond, Gold Coast, GWS, these teams, if you want to get them before their price goes up, you have to move this week. Caulfield, certainly, if you haven't got him, I wouldn't be rushing out to get him, but we'll see how he goes this week before making a call.
Nice one. All right, news, injuries, suspensions and gear. We obviously had a few rushing out of round 1. Gibcus, as mentioned, the ACL injury was pretty bad. Tough to watch on Thursday for everything he's gone through.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Dan and I are both Richmond fans as well, which even added to the pain. And then, of course, he's in about 100,000 SuperCoach teams. But, we just have to hope he can go away and get himself back next year, really. We're looking at now because we know what a super talent he is, but I think he's a must-trade in SuperCoach. The question, I guess, is do you have to trade him this week? Because there's a bye round, it's best 18 scoring, so you can probably afford to just sit him on the bench for a week and we'll still have enough players to get a decent score from 18, and then it gives us another week of information to know who to trade him to. Zachary, probably the same. I was thinking maybe you could hang on to him if it's only a week or two with a hammy, but now Essendon's saying a hamstring strain is probably going to be a month, so he's probably a trade as well. But what are your thoughts, Dan, on if you I see a lot of people pulling the trigger this week to go to someone like Massimo D'Ambrosio at Hawthorn, who was fantastic in his first game, and he's not that much more than a Gibcus. But do you think you would jump and do that move now, or maybe wait a week to see how Massimo and maybe some other options go?
Yeah, it's a big question. I think it depends how many other trades you want to book in for next week. If you're looking at guys like Riley Bonner, Jack Billings, even this week potentially, then you might end up just getting D'Ambrosio this week. He looks pretty solid, and then just taking the punt. But otherwise, you can probably afford to take. You can afford to wait that week, see if he does go well again. Because, how many times have we done this where we've traded in a guy who's done well in round 1 and then they get injured the next week? So I've touched wood, of course, for Massimo. But, yeah, it can happen and you can eliminate that risk and ensure that he is the option you want to pick by waiting a week. But also I wouldn't, be opposed to grabbing him this week as well.
So Reed was the other one as well, the hamstring injury, as you sort of mentioned. So it's like straight off the bat, 2 defensive rookies.
Yeah.
And you're just like, that is just again, punch in the guts time. That's what it is. Round 1, punch in the guts. There's our title. But also you've got Sicily on that back line as well.
Yeah.
One of the, not brain genius moves that he's ever made there. And Mason Redmond as well, right? Like these are sort of tough ones for your back line. And just in terms of SuperCoach, how do you feel about replacing them after round 1? What do you do? What's the move here, Al?
Well, the latest on Redmond has accepted a 1-match ban. I don't know if too many people have him in SuperCoach, but it might affect someone like Nick Martin, who might get a little bit more of the ball if Redmond is out. James Harms was also a bit of a late one from the MRO, got done for headbutting his best mate, apparently, Stephen May.
Teammates, like, come on.
He was...
What do you mean? You don't headbutt your mates? Come on, Al. I saw you headbutting Dan before. Come on.
I had him in my team for a lot of preseason, actually, James Harms, and thankfully took him out because he scored terribly terrible as well. Now he's suspended. So I think, and there's plenty of other great options as we've already touched on. So I think no issues with getting rid of him. I mean, Sicily is challenging his ban, so we'll see what happens there. But he scored really badly as well. I'm sure he will have some huge games like we saw last year, but it looks like he might be more of a target for opposition teams to try and nullify him. Also, the fact that he's got his role's maybe not as good this year with all these injuries down in Hawthorn's backline. So I think there's enough going on there that I think I would be prepared to move him out. But yeah, finding replacements in the backline isn't as easy. I mean, if you've got enough money from Sicily, you turn him into a Harry Sheezel or someone. That's happy days. But with some of these cheaper guys, unfortunately, we've got a lot of great cheapies and rookies around, but most of them are at the other end of the ground.
It's a tough one. I think the Sicily turning into the Karate Kid out of nowhere is just absolutely brutal. But at the same time, you do have a couple of those similarly priced like Vlosten and stuff like that, right, where you can actually go down a little bit, make a little bit of cash if you just feel like jumping off the Sicily train. I mean, he's just already ropeable, right? They've just announced the Tassie team. He's already just going to be punching holes in walls somewhere as well. You're going to hate them so much already. Love that. But let's do some stocks up, stocks down after round one. Who are we buying this week? Mine's obviously D'Ambrosio. I think the 122 that he rocked up. I'm like, how did I not have him in my team? It's a pretty easy answer. I just didn't think about it. So what was that for me? What about you, Al?
Well, yeah, I'm looking at the guys who will move in price this week. So normally we get 2 rounds to just sit back and just see, can we get 2 good games out of a rookie? And then we know, well, these are the guys that, must-haves. They're about to shoot up in value, and they're the ones you want to jump on. Unfortunately, we don't necessarily have that luxury this year for the teams that played in round 0. So there's a bunch of guys from, as I mentioned, GWS, Gold Coast. So I've got Tom Berry down, who I didn't have on my radar at all pre-season. Yeah. Pressure forward, played a few games last year, so he's not at that bottom price. But he's looked fantastic in Gold Coast first 2 games, scored a ton on the weekend. I think the conditions probably suited him. Was absolute playing in a downpour up there. So I'm not sure he'll score that well every week, but if he can just put up 50s or 60s, he's going to make, $100,000 in a couple of weeks. So he's someone that I'm considering for my forward line. Again, as I said, my forward rookies aren't too bad. There's no one I really want to get rid of, but if you want to jump on someone from those teams, and Aaron Cadman's in the same boat. I mentioned Blake Howes. If you don't have him, I think he's a must-have in your backline this week before he goes up in price. And then you're looking at someone like Billings, who's a little bit more expensive. But again, this is the week if you want to get him.
And Dan?
I'm about to say that man, Jack Billings. Yeah. After he scored 11 in that first game as a sub, we thought no chance are we going near him. Just cross him off our list, absolutely. But yeah, he's come back into the team and fired, had 12 marks, 120 SuperCoach points, and yeah, I think he's a really good option this week. He could be a potential keeper, I think, at 240k if he's spitting out those 85, 90 point scores. Then I think it's great value, and you can probably afford to watch this week, and he might not go up too much, but if he scores 100, he might rise another 40k, and he's up to 280, which isn't as attractive. So yeah, I don't mind as an option, and he should win plenty of footy against the Hawks this week.
So do you pull the trigger on that? What do you reckon, Dan?
I'm thinking potentially, as we'll get to with our stocks down, we'll find out who I might be trading out to.
Easy. Speaking of which, stock down. Mine's Nick Martin. I just feel like the stock down is literally just like he was probably my biggest disappointment this week, right? Very simply. His role sort of just felt a little bit, wonky in that Bombers team. So I'm like watching that through my SuperCoach lens going, just get more of the pill. Come on, Nick, what are you doing, mate?
Hit a target.
It's like the amount of times that we saw Zerrett and Andy McGrath, right? Just absolutely carving up, just getting plenty of touches. And you're like, Nick Martin, come on, man. Archie Perkins was crushing it. Just like, come on, Nick Martin. Nothing. So breaking my heart, Nick Martin is my first stocks down. Al?
Well, I think Martin actually, he's like, if you look at his disposals, they weren't bad, but the problem was, as Dan mentioned, he just, yeah, exactly. In SuperCoach, you've got to hit a target to be rewarded for those kicks. So an ineffective kick is worth 0, and if you turn it over, you lose points. So he didn't have a great day on that front, and maybe it's a bit of learning that new role that they've thrown him behind the ball. I think in any other season you would give him another week, and maybe the same for the guy I've got is Zach Fisher, very similar, really butchered it. Playing GWS was never going to be an easy matchup for him. I think I might have mentioned that last week and I didn't take my own advice. So now we're all judging him on that. But, 50 points, obviously well under what we were expecting. And it's just a trick of finding someone in your team, and there's all these great options like a Billings. If you want to get him, you've got to find someone to trade out, and I think Fisher's probably the one for me that I'm sure he'll have some good scores. He's not going to score 50 every week, but maybe not going to be the keeper that we thought.
Absolutely. I was going to say Zach Fisher for mine, but I'll go someone a little bit different. Jai Clark is probably one who you could consider.
This is your man.
He is my man.
You were just telling me out there to back him in.
No, absolutely back him in. But I reckon he's one that people might, if you've got a bit of cash in the bank, you could look to trade him to Tom Berry. If you've got 40K or so, you could look to move him on. But I think the Cats will persist with him, even though he scored 13 points. They're really impressed with his defensive efforts. So, I think he's the sort of guy that proved in the preseason he can score pretty well, and he's 123K. I remember a couple of years ago, I think Michael Gibbons scored about 40 in round 1, and I traded him out for, who was it? I think it was Corey Wagner, who ended up making about 50K, and Gibbons went on to make 200,000. So that can definitely backfire, but Tom Berry looks like he's a steam train at the moment.
And I guess with Jai, it's just with that 13 points in his average for the next 3 weeks, it's going to take him a while to, even if he gets up and going, he's not going to make that cash quickly, which is what you're after.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm still going to hold Jai myself. I don't quite have that money to upgrade to a Berry, but yeah, I wouldn't blame anyone for trading him out.
Yeah, he might be one of my candidates for a rage trade. Just straight off the bat. 13, come on, man. Right, we'll take a quick break. Be back to bring in the Phantom to talk all things Bubble Boys. That's right, all things Bubble Boys. And then we'll talk captain's calls, a quick fire round, all the good stuff. Right after this. All right, here he is once more, dialing in from parts unknown. I don't think you can drink the water there, though. It's the Phantom. What's going on, Phantom? How's your week 1, round 1?
2 water gags in 2 weeks. I did hear the last one, James. Don't worry about that. I've noted it. I've noted a lot from a big SuperCoach weekend. Plenty of highs, a few lows, and an interesting rookie conversation, I think, to be had.
That's right. We've got the bubble is obviously fast approaching for those teams that actually played in round 0. How are we sort of feeling about the bubble at the moment? Are there ones that we're actually just absolutely locked in on?
The bubble, it's an interesting bubble, as has been discussed, given the teams out there and players have played more. But there still are some names that you need to get into your side if you didn't start them. We know Blake Howes, if you didn't listen to us last week and jump on after his 91 in opening round, you have to get on now. The lowest break even in the competition, negative 86. Alex Sexton, another popular name we have to cover off if you didn't jump on. Negative 62 break even. The role was there again in Damien Hardwick's defence on the Gold Coast. So if you didn't get on last week, make sure you get him in. Matt Roberts from Sydney, a little less owned. We've talked about him all summer as well. Smart, efficient, and he did exactly that. He was that over the past 2 weeks. Across halfback, nice little role. They use him. They give the ball to him, the Swan. So negative 58 break even for Matt Roberts in the midfield, 156K. Get him on your bench. And if you thought you might be a little bit too smart and too cute in SuperCoach and overlooked Colby McKercher from North Melbourne, 202K, worth every cent, as we mentioned on the show and everywhere all summer. Get him in. Negative 12 break even. That's probably only going to get lower as he hits his straps, which he did in the second half last week.
Yeah, McKercher broke my heart because I traded him out. I brought in Lazaro's dog. I'm just like, let's go Lazaro's dog the entire time. And no, home entertainment system did not bring it home for me last week. So I don't know. How are you feeling about this, Al? What do you reckon you want to hit up the Phantom for some rookie talk?
Oh, I think we need to ask about defensive rookies because I think there are a lot of great options there that you've mentioned and names we've talked about, but most of them, unfortunately, are in the forward line or maybe the midfield. But we've got defenders down in terms of Josh Gibcus or a Zach Reed. If you wanted just a cheapie to replace them with, is there anyone out there?
Well, the first option that stands out, Charlie Dean from Collingwood, 123K, back-to-back 50s in his first 2 games in the big league. But he did get pushed off at times last week, especially against Sydney. Is he ready to stay in that Collingwood side? They've had their issues. They've been scored against heavily. He's got a low break even. He appears the right option, but I'd just be wary of what happens on Thursday night when the team sheets come through for him. If he is picked after what's happened over the first 2 weeks, then you can probably back him in fly. McRae is going to give him a go. Bodie Ulan's an interesting one from up there on the Gold Coast. I think Dan Batten and myself wrote him off in this year's Rookie Bowl, but he's proven us a little wrong. He's settled in down there, down back. He's very competitive, we know, and he's fitting in to what Dimmer's doing up there. We know they've got enough players to move the ball and move it quickly. Bodie's just playing his role nicely, 57 points on the weekend, negative 2022 break even. But the one I think, Marty Hall from the Demons, the mature age, his second crack in the big time with Melbourne. We spoke about him over summer. He didn't get picked in opening round, which put us off, but 123k, ideally you'd want to have another look at him, and you might be able to have another look at him and leave Josh Gibcus on your bench this week, given the best 18, because maybe Marty Hoare's the best option next week.
What do you think, Dan?
Yeah, we did write off Brody Yuland, I think, in the preseason, but he did go a little bit better than your man, Connor Butterick, on the weekend, Phantom. But looking again at the Gold Coast Suns, Tom Berry, is it real? Can he continue this scoring? Because he's scored a 60 in round 0 and then backs it up with a ton.
I can't see Connor Butterick on my team, on my screen anymore, so I'm not sure what you're talking about there. Tommy Berry, and probably another one we almost wrote off. We know he's been around the clubs up there in Queensland. It's hard to say. It's hard to be sure whether it's real and whether he can continue, but he's got the scores on the board to start. He spoke after the game. Dimmer's talked about him. He's got guys, the unheralded, the bit part players, I guess, playing a real role for the team. And that's what Dimmer's really brought. We saw him do that at Richmond, make names out of guys who some thought at the time wouldn't get games elsewhere. So he seems to be doing that a little bit at the Sun. So I reckon we come back in Tommy Berry, low break even, another option to consider up forward.
Nice one. And before we go, what do you reckon? D'Ambrosio, are we feeling good about this? What do you reckon, Phantom? Should I just be going all out to bring him in? Because I'm just teetering on the edge of just going all in for D'Ambrosio.
It's a hard one. I'm on the edge too. I want to do it. I've done it at the moment that we can reverse trades, but Connor Butterick, as my friend Dan Batten mentioned, there has made his way out. Massimo is in, but it's hard because this bloke couldn't get a game with the Bombers last year. Comes out and absolutely blitzes his old side last week at the G. Fits in, I guess, with the Hawthorn style of play from the half-back line there. So I want it to be real. I'm going to get on. We can't expect 122 points each week. We don't need that. If he can score, 70, 75 to 80 over the next couple of weeks, maybe bang out the odd ton when there's a lot of ball back there, more than enough at the price.
I just thought we'd finish off. We should ask, we're talking about all these rookies we want to bring in. Are there any that we are thinking we need to potentially trade out? And I'm thinking maybe someone like a Riley Sanders, obviously very highly owned, very talked up by all of us over the preseason, and then Bevo goes and pulls a Bevo and subs him out. And then we've got Jai Clark at Geelong, just the 13 points. I asked Dan about him earlier. He seems very confused. He was talking about how he's going to back him in, but also he's going to trade him out. I'm not really sure. So can you help us out with these guys?
Well, Dan Batten, we know he likes to lead everyone astray on the rookies. Talked down Ollie Dempsey last week and throughout the summer. Obviously smashed it down there at the Cattery on Saturday night. Jai Clark couldn't get a look in. We talked him up as an on-field option, 13 points. Have to give him one more week, I think, but he'd need to be a big score because he's not going to make a lot of cash, especially in those first couple of rises with that 13-point score. I wouldn't trade him just yet. I think we'd like to have a couple of looks at these guys and a couple of looks at the guys coming in. Yes, you might take Jai Clark out for someone who scored well on the weekend, but that doesn't mean Jai Clark's going to go under that guy again. We know it fluctuates a lot with these rookies, especially with these the debutants and 2 and 3 gamers. So have to have a look at the rookies. I think Sean Manor, an interesting one, if you did start him as a sub, if he goes out this week or the sub, you probably have to jump on him. He's not going to make much cash at all.
Nice one. There you go. Just some more words of wisdom once more from the Phantom. Thanks for jumping on, Phantom. We'll chat to you next week.
I'm going to get a glass of water now, so thanks, guys.
Nice one. Of course, you can check him out on the Phantom's Lair with all the good stuff. All right, let's get into the rest of the show. All right, we are back. How good is Phantom? God, just an absolute font of knowledge. You'll love to see that. But heading into round 2, gentlemen, who is your captain's call for this week? I completely cooked my loophole this week, obviously, with Tom Green. I'm going to go back to Tom Green. I'm going just straight to the well. He's like right off there at the end of the round as well. So we've got Dacos, Nicholas, of course. Josh, God bless his cotton socks, but it's just going to be tough to be outshined by your little brother. Couldn't happen to me. I've got 3 of them. They're all useless. But anyway, point being, I'm going Dacos vice-captain, and then we're going Tom Green captain. Simple as that for me this week.
Well, one thing with the loophole this week, if anyone wants to give it a try, you shouldn't cook it this week because anyone with a blue dot, if you look on your field there, guys with the bye, so someone like a Zach Williams, obviously not playing, you can use those guys as your loophole captain, or they're sort of live all the way through the round. So even if you have nobody on the bench who's missing, you need a 0 player after your vice captain plays, but you can always use a bye player. So that should be you should be able to get that one right this week, James. But yeah, I think Dacos hard to go past again playing on the Thursday night against the Saints. I think he'll score well. I took his VC score last week, and then I was a little bit annoyed that I should have held out for Tom Green, but you can't really complain about a 135, and that's just what he rolls out and does every week, Dacos. So obviously capable of going even bigger than that. Then you're looking at, if anyone's got Caleb Serong, we should have mentioned him before now, scored 170 points in round 1, and Freo has North at Marvel Stadium on Saturday afternoon. So you think he'd probably go all right again. So certainly worth a VC potential there. And then, someone like Heaney, absolutely on fire, hard to look past him. And then you've got, normally when the Bulldogs come up against someone like against Gold Coast, I should say, you're just counting off all the potential captain options in SuperCoach, but I don't know if it applies this year as much.
Yeah, so many point scorers at the Suns, right? So I'm not sure you can even go into that game and potentially Bont VC. I don't know, but I'm thinking Dacos VC for me. Pretty safe bet there. I went against going in VC in round 1, but I think he could win plenty of footy against the Saints. I think he racked up 40 against them in gather round last year, just off halfback, taking the P155. So and then C, I'm thinking I might go a little bit different. Zach Butters over Tom Green, which could hurt, but Zach Butters looked pretty good against the Eagles on the weekend, scored 158 against Richmond last year, and you saw how Patrick Cripps absolutely dominated in the middle in round 1. So
a couple of Gold Coast players scored okay in round 0, 2, if I recall, all the way back then.
That's it. So I think that Butters, it could be a nice little point of difference if Dacos doesn't go well.
Nice one. So who's your final call there, Al? You kind of hit on a couple of different ones.
I like to just throw a few names out there this early in the week. But I think I'll definitely VC Dacos and just see how he goes. If he doesn't fire, you mentioned Tom Green in the last game against West Coast. He's pretty tempting as well. But, the way Heaney's going, I think he could torch the Bombers.
Oh, it'd take a very brave man to back the Heaney. As good as he's been, he has burned us in the past, I'm just saying.
Yes, true.
Takes a very brave man.
He's a different man.
Righto then, let's do it. Quick fire round to finish off this show. Best Josh Gibcus replacement, Dan. Who do you like?
D'Ambrosio, plain and simple. I think you could easily get him this week.
Nice. Al?
Yeah, I think, there's not that many others around. I think if you need about 70K or something to get up to him. If you don't have that, probably, Blake Howes if you don't have him as a rookie, and probably Marty Hoare is the other cheap defender that only played his first game for the year on the weekend, so not that many people have him. I haven't got him, and I think he might be a bailout option, but can wait another week for him.
Nice one. This does bring up the pretty crucial aspect for me. Boost or no boost in round 2? Because I'm desperate. I'm like, I want to bring in the Heen machine. I want to figure out a way to get rid of Gibcus as well, but also got to build up to the Heen machine. I've got Wardlaw that I want to get rid of maybe in the midfield already. I'm just ready to pull the pin. I'm just like, we're done, Warlord. You burned me once. But what do you reckon? Round 2, can you boost or no boost, Al?
I reckon you can. Last year, I held a boost in my back pocket all the way through to the buys, and I thought this is going to be a huge advantage, and it really didn't help me all that much. I think you're better off just going for broke early because if you get too far behind it, it gets hard to catch up. So, if your team has a lot of holes in it, I'm not opposed to activating a boost already to try and make some corrections. But again, we're all guessing a little bit, just basing it on one game, so it could easily blow up in your face.
Dan, what do you reckon?
Yeah, I'm with you there, Al. I think I'm not opposed to doing a boost this week. If you've got a few holes in your team, if you've got a guy like James Sicily, then you may have to. But I'd probably prefer to save it for next week when there's so many other guys on the bubble. We can see what Bonner and other guys do, and we've got another week of data as well.
Nice one. Is there one player or spot you're still tossing and turning over, Dan?
It's a good question. It's probably that F4 spot, which is F3 rather, which was Zach Fisher. So whether I trade him out to a Billings, whether I go down all the way to a Tom Berry, something like that, and free up more cash for next week, that's probably the one I'm tossing and turning over at the moment.
Nice one. Al?
For me, it's probably Cam McKenzie. I picked him a forward line as just because I like him as a bit of a pod. He's around the same price as a Nat Fyfe, and I went the zagged where everybody else zigged, and then watching Fyfe on the weekend, I thought, I should have just gone Nat Fyfe. So maybe it's just a matter of just burn one trade. They're basically the same price, and correct that move before Fyfe comes up against North this week.
Fyfe tunning up was just such a, really? Come on, man.
Yeah.
Like everybody is just taking a victory lap and you're just sitting on the side going, I could have been a part of that.
Yeah.
Oh, well. Let's do it. A game of names. It's either ors. Let's do it. I'm going to throw out 2 names. Who are you going to take head-to-head? Who do you like the most? Who do you want to have in your team? So with you, Dan. Caleb Serong, or Matty Rowell, the grass eater himself. Who do you like?
It's got to be Caleb Serong, I reckon. Number one guy in that Fremantle midfield. And there's so many other Gold Coast options as well. Obviously, many have Flanders. I've got Miller in my team. You've got Anderson. So I think that Caleb Serong can be the main guy there. And I think he's the one I'd pick of the two.
Al?
Yeah, I'd take Serong as well. Just if for no other reason that Matty Rowell has a bye in a couple of weeks and Serong doesn't. So
checks out. Next up, we've got one of my favourites, Harry McFive, a.k.a. Harry Mackay. Still hasn't kicked his 5 yet, but he'll get there. Or Jesse Hogan. Can we actually start taking key position forwards? What do you reckon, Al?
Oh, a heap of them scored really well on the weekend. Traditionally, we don't like key position players, and scoring can be erratic. But when they go big, they can go big. And yeah, it's a real fixture watch because we saw Hogan had a huge game against the Kangas on the weekend, and Harry Mackay has North Melbourne in a couple of weeks himself. They have the bye Carlton this week, so you wouldn't be bringing him in now. But it's not the worst idea. I never would have thought about picking him. And for the few who started with Hogan, went absolutely ballistic, and he could be in for another massive score this week. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if I could bring myself to pay the $400K to bring him in just for that one game, although his price will go absolutely bananas. Yeah. And then the Giants have the bye the week after. So, I mean, I'm a traditionalist and probably can't get the key forwards, but, man, it could really pay off.
But you probably go Hogan over Mackay though, right?
Certainly this week, yeah.
Dan?
I actually don't mind Mackay, not this week, obviously, but the week after. He's getting a bit more ruck time for the Blues in the preseason games even. He was quite impressive in that role, and I think he's probably got a higher floor than, say, a Hogan because he's spending more time up in the middle. And that game against North Melbourne, he's up against Toby Pink and Callan Dawson. I think he could have a big one, and he's already gone big against, two pretty solid defences.
Nice one. All right. This one is really annoying. Jack Billings, James Jordan, or Nat Fife. That's 3 names. That's not an either or. It's an either or. What are we doing? Dan, who do you like out of those 3 the most?
It's actually 4 names, James and Jordan.
That is.
Of those 3, I've got Jordan at the moment. I think he's a pretty safe option if you haven't got him. But I think the other 2, you're not trading in a Jordan, right? You're trading in Fife or Billings who've got that more upside. And Billings is a bit cheaper. I'll probably go Billings.
Nice one. Al?
Yeah, it's probably, I've already got Jordan as well. So it's between Fife and Billings this week. Oh, man. I mean, Melbourne has a bye. Fife doesn't. But, yeah, I'm just...
Can he keep it up?
Yeah.
Can he?
I'm just annoyed with myself for not... I should have had Fife and I didn't, so maybe that's going to be the overriding factor.
We asked the question last week, Fife or no Fife, and we were...
I was wrong.
We completely cooked that one. A bold prediction for round 2. Have you got one there, Dan?
Gee, I'm actually not sure, but I think maybe Nick Martin to go 115 plus with no Mason Redmond there, and
I love this. Let's go. Come on, Nick.
Not if you're trading him out though.
Al?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to talk the guy down because he's doing great at his new club, but I mean, I wouldn't be expecting 120 points every week from Massimo D'Ambrosio. He still might be the best option in defence there at that price, but maybe a 70 or an 80 is probably more what I'd be expecting from him most weeks. So he's got the D's this week. We'll see how he goes. Might find it a little bit tougher going.
Nice one. All right. Surprise, rank him, the awkward forwards. We're going the awkwardly priced, rookie-ish kind of forward guys. Going 1 through 4. Tom Berry, Aaron Cadman, Ollie Dempsey, Jack Billings. Who are we going to go, Dan? Rank them.
Oh, I think Billings 1, Berry 2, Dempsey 3, Cadman 4.
Oh, that's just a punch in the guts. Cadman's the only one I've got. Al?
Yeah, I think I'm going to agree with Dan on that. I mean, it's just the GWS guys are just a little bit tricky because you only get them for 1 week and then they've got to buy straight afterwards. And then you would have to decide, what do you do with Cadman? Do you just trade him straight out again? Or I think if you started with him, it was a good pick, but I probably wouldn't bring him in just for the 1 game.
Nice one. At least we're vaguely vindicated for starting with him. All right, finally, the head-to-head. Last week we had Al versus Tim. Now we've got Al versus Dan. This time we're just going the one player, the Tom Green score. We've talked him up as the captain option, up against West Coast, the over-under. We're going to start the bidding at 145. That is chaos. So 145 is where we start. What are you going to go, Al? Are you going to go over or are you going to go under?
Well, I think this is a really interesting question because if you have someone like Nick Dacos as your vice captain and he scores 130, do you bank that or do you roll the dice on Tom Green? I think, the old 130 rule is that you can't say no to that. But, I mean, Green was so good, and West Coast, I mean, their midfield. Looking at last year, Green only scored 106 on them. I'm not really sure what happened in that game, but I don't know who else West Coast has. He's going to be manned up against someone like Harley Reid. So I think we're going to go over. I think Dacos would have to score nearly 140 for me to not back in Tom Green as captain this week.
Nice one. So you're going to go under there, Dan?
Yeah, I'm going to go under. I reckon, the sun over there in Perth, probably get a bit sunburned, but not great for Tom Green. Might have put the extra sunscreen on. But yeah, I just think that 145, obviously he's had an awesome game against North and only managed one. Well, not only, but he scored 152, and he can sometimes chop it a bit with his ball use. So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's going with my Butters call as well, but yeah, I'm going to go under.
Nice one. All right, I think I'm going to go over. Just fingers crossed for my captaincy. But there you go. That's it. That's the round two preview. Trying to say that quickly. That was bad. Remember, digging into all things SuperCoach. You can check these guys out on Twitter, but you can also check out this show on YouTube, IG, TikTok. I think we're probably all over the shop at this point. That's what it's all about. And, of course, subscribe, like, and star it across all of your podcast apps. For all the insights you need, of course, remember to smash code SPORTS. You can read all of Al's stuff, Dan's stuff, all around the traps, Tim's stuff. Tim is just having a melt. I'm pretty sure Tim's not here today because he's having a meltdown on Twitter. Just rage trades left, right, and center. I love it. What's the actually? To be honest, what's the over under for the amount of times that Tim trades and resets this week?
I thought you were going to say tweets, and it would be 145, I think.
To be honest, the trade and then the reverse trade, I reckon we're over about 20, 25, 30, thereabouts. 100%. Yeah, checks out. All right, but remember, tips.com.au for all your tips as well. But thank you to Dan.
Thank you very much.
Thank you to Phantom, of course. And thanks always to Al. You did a great job, Al.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, I think Dan was pretty impressive. We might have to start him again next week. We'll see how Tim pulls up.
Maybe we can fight them in the car park. That'd be fun.
Some James Harms action.
I like that. Just a bit of headbutts. There you go. All right, I've been James Clements. Happy super coaching.